The Anatomy of Ruin. Nancy Whitmore did not break people. She studied them first, like a sculptor examining marble for weak veins. Then she carved. The target. Her new neighbour moved in quietly. Lillian Moore, early 40s, recently widowed, no children. A grief-softened woman with gentle eyes and polite smiles. Nancy introduced herself with lemon bars and empathy. "I can't imagine what you're going through," she said. She didn't have to imagine. She only had to identify vulnerability. Lillian worked remotely as a financial analyst for a non-profit. Isolated, lonely, grateful for company. Nancy made herself indispensable. Morning walks, wine nights, shared secrets. Within weeks, Lillian began depending on her. Isolation by design. First rule of destruction. Remove the subject's anchors. Nancy planted quiet ideas. "Have you noticed how distant your sister's been since the funeral? She didn't seem supportive when you mentioned selling the house." Harmless observations. Seeds. Then she offered alternative companionship. "You deserve someone who shows up." Lillian's calls to her sister decreased. Her social circle narrowed. Nancy replaced them. Psychological erosion. Nancy started small distortions. "Oh, I didn't say that. You must have misheard. You've seemed forgetful lately." Lillian began second-guessing herself. Nancy escalated. She moved objects slightly when visiting, shifted framed photos, rearranged desk items, then denied it. Lillian began to worry about cognitive decline. Nancy offered help. "Maybe you should see someone just to be safe." Financial manipulation. Nancy discovered through conversation that Lillian had received a significant life insurance payout. Not enormous, but enough. Nancy suggested investing. "I know someone trustworthy," she said, referencing a contact she loosely knew from corporate events. In reality, Nancy had orchestrated the introduction with a man who had a history of questionable ventures. He trusted Nancy's referrals. She knew that. Lillian transferred a substantial amount into a short-term opportunity. The investment collapsed within 3 months. Paperwork signed, risks acknowledged. Technically legal, practically devastating. Lillian blamed herself. Nancy comforted her. "You can't trust anyone these days." The fracture. Lillian's anxiety deepened. Sleep deteriorated. Weight dropped. Paranoia crept in. Nancy leaned in. "You've been different lately." "Are you sure you're safe living alone?" Lillian voluntarily began anti-anxiety medication. Nancy accompanied her to appointments, spoke gently to doctors about Lillian's confusion episodes. Doctors listened because Nancy was articulate, concerned, stable. Lillian began to wonder if she truly was unstable. The final push? It happened on a rainy Thursday. Nancy had invited herself over. Lillian was fragile that day. "Sometimes I think I'm losing my mind," Lillian whispered. Nancy took her hand. "Sometimes when people go through trauma, they can't recover." Pause. "But there are facilities that can help." The word lingered. Facilities. Within 2 months, Lillian's sister, alarmed by fragmented calls and strange stories, petitioned for psychiatric evaluation. Nancy provided written statements. Detailed, convincing, clinical. She's not safe on her own. Lillian was placed under temporary psychiatric observation. Nancy visited once, stood by the bed, tilted her head. "It's for your own good." Lillian stared back, finally lucid. "You did this." Nancy smiled. No one would believe that. She was right. Collapse. Months later, Lillian was released. Diagnosis: major depressive disorder with psychotic features. Her house sold to cover losses. She moved into a small apartment across town. No one from the old neighborhood visited. Nancy returned to normal. Admired. Trusted. untouched. The hubris. Narcissists fall not because they lack intelligence. They fall because they believe they are untouchable. Nancy grew bored. She had tasted total control. She wanted something bigger. At work, she began orchestrating power plays, undermining an executive rival named Grant Halverson. But Grant was not grief-softened marble. Grant was granite. He suspected her early. He noticed how complaints surfaced only after Nancy's private, concerned conversations. He hired a private investigator, quietly, and unlike Lillian, Grant documented everything. Exposure. The investigation connected Nancy to the fraudulent investor tied to Lillian's collapse. Emails, private calls, financial ties through shell introductions. Not illegal directly, but unethical enough. Grant didn't confront her. He reported findings to the board. Simultaneously, Lillian's sister reopened legal inquiry after discovering inconsistencies in financial timelines. Nancy had left digital fingerprints, encrypted but traceable, patterns of manipulation, recorded conversations, altered medical influence. The fall, the board suspended Nancy pending investigation. Her phone stopped buzzing, friends stopped inviting, people reassessed memories. She was always intense. I remember feeling small around her. Grant leaked nothing. He let silence suffocate her. Then came the lawsuit. Lillian's attorney presented evidence of coercive psychological manipulation and coordinated financial influence. It became a local media story, not criminal at first, but public. Nancy watched herself dissected on the news. Corporate executive accused of orchestrated psychological exploitation. She stood in her living room, immaculate kitchen, same mirror, but this time the silence was heavy. There was no admiration left to reflect. The reckoning, court, was not dramatic. It was methodical. Text messages displayed, emails projected, behavioral patterns explained by forensic psychologists. The phrase malignant narcissistic traits entered public record. Nancy maintained composure, even while judgment was read, civil liability for financial damages, professional disqualification, reputational collapse. The non-profit filed additional inquiry into misuse of influence. Licensing boards reviewed ethics violations. Her career evaporated. The final scene, Nancy sits alone in a small rental apartment. No glass building, no assistants, no curated dinners, just her reflection. She scrolls online, comment sections filled with words she cannot control. Monster, predator, calculated. For the first time, the mirror does not provide validation. It shows a woman no one admires. And narcissists can survive scandal. They can survive loss. But they cannot survive irrelevance. Nancy whispers to her reflection, "They're wrong." But her voice sounds thin, because for the first time in her life, no one is listening.